Hey there, this is Mark Gruber along with my girlfriend Derek Cuntley from America's Really Old Stories. You are about to hear the most listened to exclusively JFK assassination podcast, and one of my favorites, the Lone Gunman podcast. Now, here's Rob and Joe.
You're muted, dork.
And here we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 274, Cuban Prisons and Right-Wing Villains. I'm one of your hosts, Big Bad Bob, otherwise known as Rob Clark. Along with me today is the always handsome and debonair, dapper Joe Borelli. How you doing, Joe?
Good. How are you, Mr. Rob?
I'm fantastic. It's been a bit of a week. Seems like it flew by, and here we are again, diving back into the assassination, my friend.
Yeah, it was a very fast week, and unfortunately getting over a little cold, so if my voice is a little hoarse, excuse me for that, but excited for the episode, yeah, I'm happy to see some of the regulars here. Hi, Colleen, Ashley, Cat Daddy Steve, and
Scott,
Mr. Scott Edwards, who is ready to eat
that
some
deserves
smoked
to be put up there. Yes,
Yes.
I agree, Scott. It's time for some hot sauce, my friend. And we are going to mention DAGO tonight as well. He kind of ties into what I'm going to be talking about in a weird way. Tangential. And what's up south to west? All of our peoples are here, and I'm sure more will be a-coming here. There's Jack.
Hey, Jack.
Just give everybody a little time to get in and get settled.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to talk about today, Joe, is Warren Reynolds a little bit.
Okay.
Everybody should be familiar with his story, but if they're not, I'll do a slight recap for folks.
Sure.
He was not a witness to the Tippit shooting, but he was a witness to supposedly Oswald running away from the Tippit shooting.
Right.
And him and his buddies there at the Johnny Reynolds car lot that his brother owned actually gave chase to Oswald, or whoever the person was that was fleeing from the scene of the Tippit murder. They actually chased him up Patton Street all the way to Jefferson, and about a block down Jefferson, where they supposedly saw this person trying to break into a secondhand furniture store down on Jefferson. And this store was beside something called Dean's Dairy Bar, which I guess was like an old ice cream joint back in the day. And in front, or right beside that, was a mechanic shop or Texaco station. And of course, this is where supposedly, the white or gray or whatever color jacket was supposedly found thrown underneath a vehicle there that was parked on the lot. And then Warren Reynolds was famously shot in the head in January of 1964 as he was closing the dealership up one night. He had to go in the basement to turn the lights off, and somebody jumped out of the shadows with a .22 rifle and shot him right in the temple. And the bullet traversed his temple and then came to rest right in front of his ear. Now, since it was a .22, it didn't really do much damage. He was able to, find a towel to put on it and walk up the stairs and call 911 and all that good stuff. And, he was fine. Luckily, it didn't penetrate his skull or damage his eye or anything major like that. But this was the first that the police actually interviewed him, was after he was shot. So Warren Reynolds had a peculiar friend named General Edwin Walker. Okay.
Oh,
Now, huh?
Very familiar
Yes.
name. Yes.
Yes. So when you're General Walker's friend, Joe, uh, there's likely to be some fuckery going on. You know what I'm saying?
Almost guaranteed.
Yeah. So when General Walker was testifying before the Warren Commission, he said, the testimony of Warren Reynolds, victim of an attempted assassination by a shot in the temple, cannot be ignored in a complete investigation. I respectfully request his appearance before your commission. Now, you see, Warren Reynolds had went to meet with General Walker at his house on June 24th of 64 and discussed the above with him, which is the fact that he said he had witnessed Lee Oswald running with a gun from the scene of the shooting of Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit. Reynolds said he wanted General Walker's advice as to what he should do. Now, how DAGO comes into the picture now, he was accused relatively quickly of being the one that shot Warren Reynolds in the head, because apparently he had been there a couple days before that and tried to sell him a car with no title, and they told him to get lost. And apparently they figured, well, he was probably very mad and upset from that and figured he'd shoot Warren Reynolds in the head for whatever reason. But Warren Reynolds quickly dispelled this notion by describing his assailant as 5'4" and either Mexican or black, but definitely dark complected, which Dago was not. So, but the police still investigated Dago very heavily, gave him a lie detector test and all that stuff. And finally it was determined that he was telling the truth. He wasn't the one that shot Warren Reynolds in the head. But it's just odd. I mean, just like out of nowhere. And Warren Reynolds said that the guy had to have been waiting down there for at least 3.5 hours for him to come down there. So this was definitely like General Walker said, an assassination attempt, a planned murder attempt. But what's interesting is, I guess it was about 10 years ago or so, I mentioned the Dean's Dairy Bar that was down on Jefferson Street. Okay. And about 10 years or so ago, Doris Dean's daughter, Delilah, Doris Dean's daughter contacted researcher Dale Myers, who wrote the book Without Malice about J.D. Tippit's murder. And of course, he's, a lone nutter and believes that Oswald is definitely the one that did all this. But it doesn't change the fact that we have a new witness coming forward to, an investigator. So the daughters tell Dale Myers a story about their mom. Now, Mrs. Dean's account supported what Reynolds had told the FAA cameraman Ron Reeland on the afternoon of the Tippit shooting, that he had seen Tippett's killer go into this secondhand used furniture store. But Reynolds did not remain on East Jefferson after he saw Oswald duck behind the secondhand furniture store, and instead Reynolds went to the Tippit shooting scene, where he gave a detailed description of the gunman to Dallas patrolman Roy Walker, and informed television cameraman and reporter Ron Reeland, and presumably police at the scene, that Oswald was hiding in an old building down the street. Now, of course, when we're talking about all this, as Oswald supposedly, or whoever it was, fleeing from the scene, they dumped their jacket, right? Well, Mrs. Dean states that she saw this person running behind her store and then coming around the side where this Texaco station was. And there was a tire rack on the side of the building. And she claimed that person threw the jacket on the tire rack and that she went out and retrieved it, which is totally different than the conventional, hey, we found the jacket under a car, at the Texaco station. So Reynolds never mentioned the secondhand furniture store in any of his 64 statements to the Warren Commission or the FBI, despite the fact that he told police and reporters this on November 22nd, that he saw Tippett's killer enter the building and later led police to search it. But what's interesting is that he, after chasing this person, went back to the scene of the shooting to give a description of the suspect. So, if Oswald had tossed his jacket onto the tire rack as allegedly claimed by Mrs. Dean, and then she retrieved it and took it into her store where she later turned it over to police, why would the Texaco mechanic Robert Brock tell NBC's Robert McNeil the very next day that the jacket was found by police in the parking lot behind the service station? Wouldn't Brock have known that his statement could easily be disproven by Mrs. Dean? Furthermore, with the purpose is claiming the jacket to be found in the parking lot behind the service station and not on the tire rack alongside the station, what does that even matter? According to her daughters, Mrs. Dean knew many Dallas policemen because they had come into her store in the past and they knew her well. She never did give an affidavit because she figured that if the police wanted to know any information, that they knew where to find her. Despite the insistence of her daughters, my sister and I clearly remember her saying that she picked it up since we kidded her about it for years. There is nothing in the contemporary record that even remotely hints that Mrs. Dean recovered the discarded jacket. On the other hand, Robert Brock's on-camera statement to Robert McNeil is supported by his own subsequent statements, those of other police officers on the scene, and the recorded Dallas police radio transmissions broadcast that day. So is Miss Dean telling the truth? Or is she fibbing? Because there's a couple other people who claim to have found this jacket as well.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah. Three-wheel motorcycle officer Thomas Hudson testified to the Warren Commission in 1964 that we were searching the rear of the house in the 400 block of East Jefferson Boulevard at the rear of the Texaco station. Behind cars parked on a lot on this location, a white jacket was picked up by another officer. I observed him as he picked it up, and it was stated that this was probably the suspect's jacket. The original description was that he was wearing a white jacket, and it looked like a white jacket to me. I didn't see it that close. I was about 25 yards away from the officer who had picked it up. Captain Westbrook was there behind the house with us, and he was there at the time this was picked up by the man, but I don't know who had it in their hands first. The only time I saw it was when the officer had it. And in Gary Savage's 1993 book, First Day Evidence, an officer identified only as K told the story of finding the jacket. He says, we pulled up on Jefferson and started checking some cars behind the service station to see if the suspect was hiding in or under one of the cars. That's when we found this jacket. I saw Captain Westbrook in his car on Jefferson, so I turned the jacket over to him. It isn't easy to handle a motorcycle and hang on to a jacket. Officer K was described as another three-wheel motorcycle officer who was assigned to work traffic and the crowd along the Stemmons Freeway at Industrial. A list of Dallas Police motorcade assignments shows 3 officers assigned to Stemmons Service Road at Industrial, three-wheel motorcycle officers John Mackey and W.E. Wilson, and Accident Prevention Bureau officer R.J. Kosan with a K. So, this might be our mysterious person who was designated as Officer K, who they didn't identify. So according to this new information, here's what more than likely happened after J.D. Tippett was shot in light of this new information. So at 1:16, and 20 seconds, Reynolds and his buddy Patterson trail Oswald and watch him duck behind the secondhand furniture store at 413 East Jefferson. After a few minutes, they are convinced that he's gone inside. At 1:18 and 38 seconds, Reynolds leaves the area, crossing in front of the ambulance dispatched to the shooting scene. Reynolds follows them on foot, and Patterson remains behind on Jefferson to make sure Oswald doesn't leave the area. At 1:19, Mrs. Dottie Dean, whatever her name is, of Dean's Dairy Way at 409 East Jefferson hears a commotion next door. The sounds of someone trying to break in, then sees Oswald walk past her store heading west on Jefferson as he starts to take off his jacket and throw it on the tire rack, according to her. 1:19:30. Patterson leaves Jefferson Boulevard and heads towards 10th and Patton to report that Oswald has fled the area and discarded his jacket in the process. At 1:20 and 29 seconds, an unidentified person telephones police to inform them that the suspect just passed Ballew's Texaco service station at 401 East Jefferson Boulevard. At 1:21 and 29 seconds, Channel 1 police radio dispatcher informs officers that the suspect just passed 401 East Jefferson, the address of Ballew's Texaco service station. At 1:22 and 38 seconds, at 10th and Patton, Reynolds provides Officer Walker with a first broadcast description of the Tippit gunman. At 1:22 and 38 seconds, at 1:23 p.m., Officers Owens, Gerald Hill, and Assistant DA Bill Alexander arrive at the shooting scene. An individual, possibly Patterson, informs Owens and Hill that the suspect discarded his jacket in the parking lot at 400 block of East Jefferson. At WFAA TV cameraman Ron Reeland and radio reporter Vic Robertson and Dallas Morning News reporter Hugh Ainsworth arrive at the shooting scene. Reynolds tells Reeland that the suspect ran into an old building down the street. And at 1:24 and 30 seconds, Officers Owens, Hill, and Assistant DA Alexander converge on the two secondhand furniture stores at 413 and 417 East Jefferson and begin searching them. Reeland begins filming, and Reynolds and Patterson approach the Brox at the Texaco service station and asked if they saw a white man pass them. When the Brox tell them that he was seen going into the parking lot behind the station, Reynolds and Patterson inform the Brox that the white male probably shot a police officer 2 blocks away. Captain Westbrook, who has just arrived from the schoolbook depository, leads a cabal of police into the parking lot behind the service station. Reynolds, Patterson, and Brock join them. A discarded jacket is discovered by police laying under the car in the parking lot behind the Texaco service station. At 1:25 and 42 seconds, Officer J.T. Griffin radios the discovery of a jacket in the parking lot behind the Texaco station. Reynolds is convinced that the gunman is still in the area. Police intensify their search of the two secondhand stores, but turn up nothing. Thanks, Warren Reynolds, for wasting a whole lot of everybody's time. So, interesting thing about Mr. Warren Reynolds is that, of course, after all this hullabaloo and his Warren Commission testimony, he just kind of fades into obscurity. You know, he kind of distances himself from the far right. But he was tracked down by our old friends at the House Select Committee on Assassinations in 1977, November 22nd to be exact. He is living now in Dallas, Texas, on Lancaster Road. Summary of contact report, Joe. On November the 11th, 1977, at about 1640 hours, that's 4:40 for you, maybe, mathing at home. The undersigned investigators contacted the subject via telephone, which had been necessitated, if that's a word. I'm merely reading it. Only after a personal visit to his, quote, used car lot met with negative results. After identifying ourselves, Mr. Reynolds persisted in ascertaining why we wanted to talk to him, stating, "Maybe I can save you a trip." He was informed that we wanted to talk to him concerning the occurrences in connection with President Kennedy's assassination. Mr. Reynolds then stated, "I'm not interested. I don't want to talk to you. I have nothing to say. He then terminated the conversation. That means he hung up on them, Joe.
Yes.
Recommended follow-up, if any. Further contact in person to allay any fears that he might have concerning this investigation. Signature, you'll love this one, Joe. Martin J. Daly.
Another Martin, huh?
There's another J. Martin. We missed an HSCA investigator.
Oh, wow.
Gosh darn it.
Well,
gosh darn it.
That's why we pay attention to these things, and the list is growing, right?
Yeah. And I got one more fun thing to do, but
Sure.
We'll save that for after your little segment, my friend. It's just going to be a nice little fun exercise for us and the listeners to go through and kind of poke fun at the lone nutters a little bit, you know.
Okay. That sounds pretty fun.
So now let's go to Cuba, to the Trescornia Prison.
To the Trescornia Detention Center in Cuba.
In Cuban, that means 3 corners, folks, for y'all keeping track at home. I think.
Yes, and it was a very popular spot for a lot of the characters that we study. And a lot of this has been covered in...
Thank you, Scott.
In previous episodes, but I'm just going to do a little run through because we've had a lot of new subscribers. So let me do this. So this is the picture of the dock at Trescornia, which was the prison that held Santo Traficante Jr., Lauren Hall, John Martino, Bernardo de Torres, Jake Lansky, who was Meyer Lansky's brother, Dino Cellini, and a long other list of characters.
That's got to be the shittiest prison I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I think that was the point. And
it looks a little lax security-wise. I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, I'll talk about some of that, but it was for some people, it wasn't for others. Someone like John Martino, who was in a Cuban prisons for 40 months, compared to someone like Santo Traficante Jr., who was in Cuban prisons for 2 months. And Louis McWillie, one of our Martins, was working in 1959 in the Tropicana Casino, which was pretty much the last kind of operating casino that Castro didn't take over. So when I was thinking about this, I was like, why are people like Santo Traficante and Meyer Lansky's brother and other major players being detained? Most of this happened in July of 1959. And that is when Jack Ruby came to Havana to help out some of his friends. And I was doing a lot of reading on this, and apparently the Jewish mafia had a lot more money invested in Cuba and the casinos than the Italians did. Meyer Lansky and maybe holding his brother was some type of leverage negotiating point. But
hey, give me some money, we'll let him out.
Exactly, right? And of course you have the Santo Traficante allegations that although he was involved in the CIA Castro assassination plots, was he really trying to do that, or was something worked out? As Lauren Hall famously said, there's only 2 people left in this, me and Santo, and as far as we're concerned, we're not going to say shit, and that's why we're going to stay alive. And Sandro Trafficante Jr. did live a long life, died of a heart attack in early to mid 70s, I believe. Lauren Hall got a lot of good treatment post. I'd say in the decades after, was treated nicely. And I'm going to read some of his HSCA testimony, which is just funny. And it's been covered before on this podcast and on the Dallas Action. But some parts I just found so funny. So
before you do, Joe, you got a question here, bud.
Okay, sorry, I'm not looking at
It's right on the screen.
Okay. Was Hemmings there, do you think? Was he there in Cuba? No, I do not believe so. What? No, was he in the prison? No. I don't believe so. Am I wrong, Rob? No.
He said so much shit over the years. I don't know, but I know he wasn't there at the same time as any of these guys.
I did not
overlap with Martino at some point.
Yeah,
he was in Cuba periodically, but I don't know about this prison in particular.
Yes, I came across nothing that saw him in the Cuban detention camp we are discussing, but he was obviously
anybody named Hemmings got to be CIA or an asshole.
Who?
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him. And I do think he stayed out of that mess, but that made me think, why would someone like Louis McWillie be able to not get rounded up in the July and summer of 59 roundup of mobsters who are running casinos, including a huge mafia boss, obviously for leverage, but why was someone like McWillie allowed to continue to work there, as he testified to the HSCA throughout 1959? And I then thought back to something I read about how the Jewish mafia was the most invested in the Cuban casinos, more than the Italians. And maybe that's one of the reasons why shortly after McWillie, that's one, invited Ruby to Cuba, Trafficante was released within 10 days after his arrival. And I'm actually going to read a little bit from Larry Hancock's Someone Would Have Talked. A very small paragraph.
Good old Larry.
One of the best, if not the best. Martina, who had been making a series of trips back and forth between Miami and Havana, had been arrested in July and was in prison in August. The year 1959 was not the best of times for someone in the casino associations, making his first carefree visit to Cuba. Not sure if that was his first trip to Cuba, but there is a good reason to look for something else behind Ruby's trip. Perhaps it was not as simple as McWillie throwing some tickets in the mail to Dallas.
Well, it seems to me, Joe, that Louis McWillie is kind of like the Jewish version of what's his name for the Italians mafia? Handsome Johnny Rosselli.
Okay.
Seems like he's the Jewish version of Johnny Rosselli. He's a fixer. He gets things done. He kind of works both sides of the fence. Helping Castro out probably and helping himself out, making things happen. That's probably how he evades a lot of this stuff. He's working both sides of the fence, probably, be my guess.
Yeah, and a lot of people were working both sides of the fence. Obviously the CIA was.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the mercenaries were.
Gun runners,
They
which
supported,
McWillie was doing.
of course. Yes, one of his top trades, and he goes on to talk about Elaine. Here we go, number 2, Minier, who worked at a car rental agency in Dallas Airport, where she had often seen Ruby and McWillie travel together before McWillie moved to Havana. She told the FBI that in May of 59, she visited McWillie in Havana and carried a short coded message from Ruby to McWillie. Her story was found very credible by the HSCA, which concluded that Ruby was most likely serving as a courier to the gambling interests.
Do you know what his secret coded message was, Joe?
I don't.
It was, eat 'em. That was it.
I'll eat all them Cuban girls and stuff. That's I think Oswald should have probably just said that at the embassy if he was there. And
I think Jack
probably
Ruby liked the kosher hot dogs, if you know what I'm saying.
And the HSCA also concluded that while in Havana, Ruby had met with crime figures detained by the Cuban government. McWillie himself had visited Santo Traficante, jailed in Trescornia, and testified without prompting that Jack Ruby could have been out there with me or not. So when the HSCA asked him about this, he goes, he could have been with me. I'm not sure. Maybe, I think so. I'm not sure. And just completely, leaves it open-ended. And that was the point. The HSCA was obviously very mafia focused, right? And McWillie just was able to somehow get himself not thrown in a Cuban prison, one of the few.
He was very good at dodging raindrops, Joe.
Yes. And I'm not sure exactly why. So that's something to think about and for me to kind of look into more. I'm going to continue here. I have just one more short paragraph. Interestingly enough, Ruby's travel records show that he entered Cuba from New Orleans on August 8th, 1959, left Cuba on September 11th. That would be a month and 2 days-ish. Re-entered Cuba from Miami on September 12th, and then left for New Orleans on September 13th. 2 trips to Cuba, not one. However, Dallas police bank records and FBI records show Ruby in Dallas on August 10th, 21st, 31st, and September 4th, all in the middle of his supposed Cuban vacation, in air quotes. Was Ruby going out of Cuba illegally as well as legally? I would say that based on Hancock's description there of his travel records, I would say probably yes. The HSCA concluded that if all known records were reviewed, Ruby would have had to have made at least 3 trips to Cuba, not one as he claimed. How he accomplished these extra trips is an open question. And again, that's from someone would have talked by the great author Larry Hancock. So,
in a very underrated superhero movie.
Yes.
Scott,
so I'm sorry.
Why's it got to be a black Manhattan, man? Why's it got to be a black one? Can't enjoy a white Manhattan?
Yeah.
See, that's a callback to the last show. If
my
just
God.
went right over your head.
It went right
over Joe's last time.
Yes, completely.
But that's awesome. I hope you enjoy your black Manhattan, my friend.
Yes.
Whatever that is.
Yes.
That is too fancy for your boy.
And to answer
John from Seattle is in the house with the super chat, super whatever sticker, whatever it is.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Always appreciated, my friend.
Yes. And
so now you're talking Mexican to us. Averno, is that Spanish, Joe? For something? Or is it Italian?
I'm not sure. Scott's
is it a dry vermouth, sir? Or a little white wine? I don't know. Scott, what's in a black Manhattan? And dumb it down for us. Like children's English. No, but Joe, I think you bring up a lot of good points there with the prison and these cats that were staying in there.
Yeah.
Didn't mention David Christ at all, CIA asset.
Yep, he was there.
A lot of these characters that come into the narrative of the Kennedy assassination. They weave in, they weave out, and
Yeah, I just put up a slide. On the left is John Martino. To the right of him is Santo Trafficante Jr. in his older age. Here is Lauren Hall, which might not be a mobster, but more of a mercenary. And to the right is Jake Lansky, the brother of Meyer Lansky. So,
all right, you can bust Joe's balls now because apparently Averno is an Italian liquor, Joe, and you didn't know that.
Oh. Well, send us a bottle. And I have some more stuff on Ruby and McWillie in Cuba. I kind of touched on already. I just wanted to
Uncle Dave. Hi, Uncle Dave. He says Lansky stayed in Cuba to avoid the DOJ stateside and keep away from the scene mafia family squabbles in New York. Cellini ran Lansky's casino interest in Cuba. So there you go.
That could be very possible. So essentially, Santo Trafficante is arrested and imprisoned in Cuba around June 8th. Disregard 62 and put 59 in there. So I'm sorry about that. John Martino was arrested shortly after and was jailed for 40 months as opposed to 2 months for Santo Trafficante. Ruby enters Cuba on August 8th, 1959, not 62. And his tickets and expenses were paid by McWillie. On August 18th, so you're talking 10 days after, Santo Trafficante is released from Trescornia to attend his daughter's wedding. Very nice, huh? I wonder if some type of deal was worked out. August 10th, 21st, and 31st, and September 4th, I didn't add on here. DPD have files, bank records, other things of him being in Dallas. Implicates that he had gone back and forth, and especially this last part where he leaves Cuba on September 11th, comes back the next day on September 12th, and then leaves for Cuba again. So it seems like he had some type of mission or operation that he was taking part in. We all know about the Hoover memo about Jeeps and Cuba and using Oswald's name. So,
and Castro's personal gun runner, McCown, who Ruby allegedly went and visited.
Yeah.
Tried to get a letter from.
Yeah. And then
who Oswald also tried to go buy guns from.
So it's a big tangle for like $100,000 in that in today's
I'll buy 4 rifles for you for $10,000 a piece.
Yeah, it was that much when he could have gone into a local store or sat in the garage and ordered his own. And it's very fascinating, but I think a lot of the characters that were imprisoned by Castro had a huge vested interest after they realized, oh shit, this Castro isn't good for us, to overthrow him. And it's my personal belief that the goal of the plotters was to prompt an invasion of Cuba. My working theory. I'm not set on it.
I concur.
I available to any new information and open-minded. I don't pretend to know what happened in this case, but that's the way I'm leaning.
Scott asked, why leave and come back the next day? Well, I'll tell you, Scott, it's either for women, money, or drugs, or guns. He had to come back and get some more and take them back.
I think money. Or it could be more than one of your... It could be like B and C, right? It could be money and girls. So,
yeah, I believe Phillips was in Cuba at that time as well. Yeah.
Yep, but there were no shortage of cute girls in Cuba at that time. So,
yes, Scott, he might have needed some hot sauce. Unfortunately, Silk City was not around in 1959. So it would have had to be, Santos' secret sauce or something. Sicilian secret super sexy sauce. 1959. All right, Joe, you want to bust some lone nutters' balls?
Yes, I would love to.
All right. I have here some things from Dale Myers, who I talked about earlier, that I found on his website. And I'm reading through them like, are you kidding me? So this is what he says proves Oswald's consciousness of guilt. Okay? Are you ready for this?
Yes, sir.
Number one, that Oswald lied repeatedly during his interrogation, which betrayed his consciousness of guilt. Now, I don't think that's a really off statement. I mean, he did lie a little bit, but he also told a lot of the truth about his past and going to Russia and this, that, and the other,
Yeah, you uploaded something earlier on the Lone Gunman channel, the body language experts talking about Oswald.
Yes, that's very interesting stuff.
Very interesting. And they talked about his smugness, and it's almost like his request for legal assistance was a veiled type of code. Say, I need to be, bailed out of this. And he repeated it a couple times, and it's just very interesting. I wasn't 100% on with their reaction to him when they said that he had been charged with the president. And I mean, I saw his face and I could envision it right now. And it was disbelief and OF,
Yeah.
Like this is, I'm not going to get help here.
Like, I don't see his actions and his state of emotion while he's in custody as any kind of smugness or defiance. I think it's more, I mean, you got to put yourself in his shoes. If he is innocent of killing the president and J.D. Tippit, he definitely has to realize at that point that he has been set up by somebody to take the fall for this, and it looks like it is going to happen. I mean, it's him against the world at that point, him against the entire police department. What can you say? I mean, at that point, what can you say? I mean, you can scream you're innocent till the roof flies off the building, but he doesn't seem the type to unnecessarily waste energy like that. Yeah, he gets fired up at some points, when they're shuffling through the halls and and stuff like that. But that's desperation, you know. I don't
Yeah.
know. So another point he makes here,
And
is Oswald,
after probably like 8 or 10 hours of interrogation, right?
yeah, probably more than that.
Right. What was it? A midnight press conference?
Yeah.
So he came in at around what, 2-ish?
Yeah, so he's 10 hours in at that point.
Yeah.
And you know they didn't let him sleep much. If he could sleep.
Maybe they were blasting the hard rock like they would do to make sure the terrorists don't sleep when they were interrogating them.
I don't think there was much hard rock around back in 1963, but
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Oswald denied purchasing or even owning the Mannlicher Carcano rifle found on the 6th floor. Documents in Oswald's own handwriting prove he ordered the rifle and had it mailed to his Dallas post office box. You know, that's not a lie. I mean, it was ordered in A. Heidel's name, and I don't know. I can't remember if it was the rifle or the handgun that was supposedly printed by Marina, not him. And there's a lot of problems with his Dallas post office box and somebody picking it up in that A. Heidel name without any identification or proof that it was ever picked up by anybody.
Right.
So, yeah, there's problems there. Oswald denied that the backyard photograph of him holding the rifle was in fact him. He claimed it was his face superimposed on another man's body. Scientific examination later proved the photographs were genuine and unaltered. I don't know about that. There's a lot of scuttlebutt, about the fact that Oswald knew how to do this from working, with a lot of photography from when he was working at Jagger's Child Stovall. And there are problems with the photo, no matter what experts you want to put up there and say it's authentic. It hasn't been altered. You okay? Go study shadows and, I mean, people have even looked at like when the bushes were blooming. You know what I mean? So there's problems.
Yeah. Rob, we have a comment I want to address.
Well, put it up on the screen, Joe.
Phillips was in Cuba then, I think. I'm not sure when, but David Atlee Phillips's cover was blown in Cuba at some point, and he was taken out of there. He was not part of the stay behind team like Tony Sforza or other real hardcore people. And in terms of 1959, I'm not 100% sure. But
Scott says apparently you couldn't buy a gun in Texas. That is not true, Scott. You definitely buy guns in Texas.
in the 60s, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like they sold them at like the local, what is it?
Bodega, probably.
Like the Walmart of the day. You know what I mean? Like you didn't have to go to the fancy sporting goods gun store.
The Dick's Sporting Goods of the day.
Yeah, you could definitely get them at pawn shops back then. Remember that guy Warren Castor? He had just bought 2 rifles from some sports shop down there and brought them into the school book depository the day before the assassination to show Roy Truly and
showing them off
everybody else. So yeah, you could definitely buy guns back then in Texas for sure.
And one more before you continue. Who's saying Ruby was in Dallas when he was in Cuba and why? And I sourced that from Someone Would Have Talked. That is Larry Hancock's book, and that was a small section. There are travel records that confirm that he was going back and forth. And I think in the last episode, Rob and I talked about reading books is different than research. But if you read books from certain researchers that only primary source documents and go off that, you can get a pretty good idea of that. And I don't doubt it for a minute. And there are documents that I found that correlated with that. Why buy it through mail? To make a trail. To make a paper trail. You're muted, Rob.
Oh, my dumb ass is muted now.
It's okay.
Yes, thank you. But yeah, why buy it through the mail? Paper trail. Yeah, for sure. Got to have that paper trail if you're going to set somebody up for this stuff. Next is Oswald denied telling Buell Frazier that he went to Irving the night of 21st to get curtain rods. He denied putting a long package in the back of Frazier's car, and he denied carrying a long package into the depository. No curtain rods were found in the depository. Actually, there were curtain rods found in the depository. They are in evidence. At the Texas Portal to History, you can see them. But he denied putting a long package in the back of Frazier's car and denied carrying a long package in the depository. Well, Frazier himself pretty much backs this up by saying it wasn't a long package. It was basically 2 feet long to 28 inches. So 24 to 28 inch package is not that long. And it's definitely not a rifle. Not even broken down. A broken down Carcano is at least, 34 or 36 inches, even if you take it apart.
Yeah.
So,
and and his sister also back him up in that fact as well, saying she didn't see anything, him carrying anything?
No, she said she saw him carry a package and put it in the back of Buell's car.
Okay.
But she didn't say, she couldn't really estimate how long it was. But Buell got a better look at the package. But again, there's problems with all of this stuff and what Buell says and everything else. So who knows?
Yeah, he's not a reliable witness as evidenced by his last book. And I know you are an expert on him and you've done a lot of work on him. And you can go back and look into
He's a liar.
You could go back and look into the Lone Gunman episodes that Rob has addressed Buell, Wesley Frazier, and
yes.
It's pretty conclusive. So.
Oswald claimed he was having lunch with James Jr. Jarman on the first floor at the time of the shots. Jarman testified later that he had ate alone. Again, I wouldn't put much faith and trust into what the black workers at the school book depository had to say about things. They were very hesitant and reluctant to say anything that would let alone tie them anywhere near this guy. Okay.
Yep.
There's a lot of problems with all of their stories.
Yeah. So, you have to think of how African Americans were treated, especially in the deep South in Texas in the 60s, and very easily could have been leveraged and intimidated and threatened, and in almost every way. It would have been cake for an intelligence service to do that to a factory worker, a black factory worker in the 60s. Yeah. They wanted nothing to do with it.
And one last thing here, Joe. Oswald denied having any knowledge of the name A. Hidell, the name used to order the weapons used to murder President Kennedy and Dallas Patrolman J.D. Tippit, despite the fact that when he was arrested, his wallet contained a false Selective Service identification card in the name of Alec James Hidell, which featured Oswald's photograph on it when it wasn't even supposed to have a photograph on it. U.S. postal records showed that Oswald had authorized A.J. Hidell to receive mail in his post office box in New Orleans, but not Dallas. Filling in the Hidell name in his own handwriting, when confronted with the form on Sunday, November 24th, Oswald denied any knowledge of the contents of the form or any explanation of why he would put the name A.J. Hidell, which he claimed to have no knowledge about, on the post office form. So, did Oswald lie about that? Maybe. Unless he was totally being set up using this false name, A.J. Heidel. You know, if you're going to set somebody up, take the fall for an assassination on the president, you're going to have to tie that person somehow to a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like I've always said, Joe, you know, if Oswald was part of the plot, and I don't mean that he was on the 6th floor shooting, okay, but if his part of the plot was to get this rifle in that building on the 6th floor that day, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was told, look, this rifle's registered to some Cuban guy named AJ Heidel. It can't ever be tied back to you. Don't worry about a thing. You know, it'll be blamed on Cuba. If we've got this whole thing. You know, he's a pro-Castro guy. He's a communist, Marxist, whatever. And it'll look like he was trying to kill Kennedy or did kill Kennedy. And then we'll finally be able to attack Castro and put Cuba down for good once and for all. And he could have been motivated in that way to be a part of the plot.
That's definitely plausible. And, you know, the whole aspect of him having that ID on him in his wallet, allegedly, literally links him to the murder weapon. So that's not operationally smart, nor is it operationally smart to not bring your handgun and to go back and get it if you believe that official story. And none of it makes sense, nor would you bring the gun in the morning of. It would seem like the worst time to bring a gun into the building. At least bring it in earlier in the week. Or I remember one of my favorite episodes, Rob, that you had with a guest, and I forget his name. I'm sorry. It was of Acme Building Management. And the guest went into a deep dive in how this management company had full access to the TSPD all night.
Well, look, Joe.
They were the cleaning crew. So,
yeah, but look, this building, okay? It was old, big. You know, I highly doubt it was that secure. You know what I mean? You could easily climb up on the catwalk, you know, the fire escape.
Jack Doherty had keys.
And probably Jimmy a window open. You know what I mean? To get into this building. I mean, you got to remember, this is 1963, folks, when security is very lax. People didn't lock their doors. They didn't lock their cars.
No cameras, no CCTV.
You know, and this place was not locked down like Fort Knox. I mean, it had books in it, okay? You know, how many criminals are going to break into a building and steal books? Not many, you know? So, you know, I highly doubt the security of this building was very important to many people. And like you said, Joe, you know, a lot of people had keys to this building, the Acme Cleaning Company, the elevator company, Jack Doherty.
The dullard.
And I don't see, like, you know, a big cleaning crew coming into the school book depository every night to clean it. I mean, this shithole had plywood floors.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man. You know?
Probably once a week.
Yeah. I mean, this wasn't happening every day.
No.
No way.
Right. But there were a lot of people that had access, to your point. It was not the most secure building. The Secret Service didn't secure that building, the windows. And it's something we might not ever know. But Frazier's nickname,
Weasel,
when he was a kid, was the Weasel. That has
the Wheeze.
That says, I think he says a lot about him.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
And Frazier wore moccasins. I think that says a lot about a person too.
I mean, he was only what, like 19, 20 during that time? Like, he was young. He was right? Young. And obviously, a lot of people familiar with the case will know about how He was picked up in the middle of the night, re-picked up, interviewed twice. You're the expert on that, but they definitely intimidated him as well to get.
Social outcast. I was thinking you said 2. I was thinking, and Scott commented 3 wallets. Yeah, I thought.
Yeah,
he had one in his pocket. One was found at the tip of murder scene, and he supposedly left a wallet, at Marina's pad or Ruth Payne's pad with Marina.
Yeah.
So yeah, most people don't have 2 wallets, let alone 3 wallets. Especially somebody with no effing money ever. So, I mean, unless you had 3 different, you had one wallet with a Heidel identity in it. You had one wallet with a Lee Harvey Oswald identity in it, and you had another wallet with a Harvey Lee Oswald identity in it. Whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Which is possible.
Yeah, but things did not go right. They did not go according to plan, and that's maybe one of the reasons. They
hung him out the window, butt first, bungled and botched, butthole first, right out the window.
So, Rob, let's wrap this up. Why don't you give a little tease about quick hits this weekend, and then I'll talk about next week.
Yes, folks. Once again, thanks for joining us. Links to join our locals community are down in the description. We are halfway to our goal of 50 over there, so we can actually start doing some things over there. So if you haven't already, sign up. You can. It's free, or you can choose to be a monthly supporter. It's totally up to you, and we love you either way.
Yes, Rob, let me stop you there. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Jack Taylor, Scott Edwards, and whoever else John gave us a super chat. Send your email to the Lone Gunman Podcast at gmail.com.
John's already a supporter.
John's already a supporter. Okay.
Yes.
I have bought a few coins.
An OG supporter.
I appreciate that. And Colonel Reb as well, who is in here. Send an email to the Lone Gunman Podcast. I will gift you guys some memberships. I bought some coins.
Joe said he'd buy everybody some memberships that are in this chat.
Well, I said the best comment of the night gets a free membership of every show. So I'll let you decide. What was the best comment of the show? And who deserves the free membership? I think I know who you're going to pick. It might start with a C.
Oh, Joseph. I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and check because there was a lot of good ones.
Yes.
Actually, I'm going to say Scott Edwards and his Black Manhattan. I did get some enjoyment out of the Black Manhattan comment. I mean, what's better than knowing that he's sitting there chilling, watching the show, sipping on a drink, just loving life. Hanging out with the boys for an evening.
Yes. And
he has signed curtain rods from Buell Frazier. What's cooler than that?
Yes. And he helped clear up the Averno being an Italian liquor, which I probably should have known, but I've only been there once. So,
well, I'm going to have to pick a different one because Scott said he joined last week. He said he thought it was like OnlyFans, which thankfully it was not, which is true. Very true. You would have been very disappointed, Scott.
Yeah, I don't think our OnlyFans would be that successful, but
yes.
You
can go watch me and Joe 69 each other for a small fee of $5 a month. Don't worry, Joe. We're like 3 states away from each other.
No comment. But we do have some interesting things coming up in the next week. This is going to be Quick Hits Weekend. And
hold on, Joe. I'm not done with the comment section.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're jumping ahead, sir.
Sorry.
So, again, the link for locals is in the description. If you would like cop some cool merch, like this hat here that your boy is wearing, and the sweatshirt that Joe is wearing, the link is in the description as well. And if you love yourself, some hot sauce like we love our hot sauce, go get yourself some damn Silk City, baby. Silk City hot sauce, folks. It is delicious. It is very reasonable, and you can enter the code Gunman at checkout for 20% off your entire order. Hell of a deal. Hell of a deal. And on Valentine's Day, Joe,
Yes.
did you know that next week on Valentine's Day, everything in our merch store is 22% off?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
22.
Yeah. And then the weekend after that is everything is free shipping. So,
Ooh.
yeah, if you've been putting it off and waiting for a good time to buy next Valentine's Day, treat yourself to some sweet merch and hot sauce, baby.
Yes. And
Yes. Now go ahead, Joe. Feel free to plug away because we got some big things coming up this weekend.
yes,
I'll be recording Quick Hits tomorrow with Doug, and it will probably drop Sunday morning, more than likely. So be looking out for that. And I believe Joe has his first ever appearance coming up soon. Tell everybody about that, Joe.
Well, non-lone gunman appearance. And that will be on the Ocelli Effect.
I am letting him off the plantation for a couple of minutes.
On their JFK Myths series with Mr. Mike Swanson.
I've done that before.
You have, sir.
I have.
Of Wall
Many
Street.
moons ago.
Which is I actually signed up for their daily emails, and as a finance guy, I love it. And Carmine Sabatano, who was one of my early
we love Carmine and hope to have him on the show very soon.
Yes, people I looked up to just because his no bullshit, straight document based approach, and the early episodes I listened to on The Lone Gunman with Rob and Carmine were some of my favorite, and I'm very excited to be there. And it's fitting because, you know, we're going to talk about Dumb and Dumber, and as you might touch on a Quick Hits, and as we might touch on again on the Ocelli Effect, and we will expose the frauds for what they are.
Hang on, Joe. Hang on. I got to hear this one more time. Hold on.
Okay.
I've got to hear this one.
I know.
Just one more time.
I know where you're going.
Huh?
Love it. Play it.
Hey there. This is Mark Gruber, along with my girlfriend Derek Cuntley from America's Really Old Stories. You are about to hear the most listened to exclusively JFK assassination podcast, and one of my favorites, the Lone Gunman podcast. Now, here's Rob and Joe.
That is classic. I love that.
Yeah. And
they were really kind to do that soundbite for us. We really appreciate it.
Yes, they are stand up guys, as the mafia says. Stand up guy.
One stands up, one kneels. It's all good, baby.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that's it for this week. Tune in again next week for another exciting show for episode number 275, which we don't know what the hell we're going to talk about yet, but we'll let you know when we do. So you can get notified when we go live next week. So, for handsome Joe Borelli, Joey Scars, Joby, up in Kennedy, Cunt, woo, and Rob, your boy here in Virginia. This is your boy Big Bad Bob and Joey B, Scars Borelli. Till next time. Peace.
See you later, guys.
Peace out. the Red Hot Chili Peppers dance back in '92. Remember that video? All right, peace, people.